Israeli media say there's been progress in talks involving Israel, the US, Egypt and Qatar that took place in Paris. Let's find out more with Hamda Salhout, who's live for us from Tel Aviv. What more are you hearing about this, Hamda?
Well, the Israeli delegation came back with what they're calling cautious optimism about potentially reaching a deal that would involve a pause in the fighting for around 6 weeks, according to Israeli media. Now, this delegation was sent after immense pressure from the Americans to go back to the negotiating table and see what concessions can be given up in order to secure a deal. Now, that delegation was headed by the head of Israel's Shin Bet and the head of Israel's Mossad. These are the internal and external security agencies. Once they returned from Paris tonight, they are going to present their findings, what they're calling an outline for the deal, to Israel's war cabinet, where it will then be presented to the wider cabinet. While there are still a lot of gaps to be filled, still a lot of sticking points, they're saying that it is moving in a positive direction because they now have this framework for how the deal can be achieved. We're talking about a deal that potentially would see the release of 40 Israeli captives from Gaza in exchange for hundreds of Palestinian prisoners and around a 6-week pause in the fighting. Again, these are all preliminary details reported in Israeli media, but it seems that there are positive signs about getting to a deal.
Yeah, so cautious optimism about these talks and the outcome. More protests in Tel Aviv, meanwhile, this Saturday. Hamda, tell us about what we can expect.
We're expecting 2 different demonstrations, one right here behind me in what's become known as Hostage Square, where families of Israeli captives currently held in Gaza for the 20th week in a row will come here to call on the Israeli government to do more to secure the release of their loved ones. Now, simultaneously, right across the street outside of Israel's defense ministry, known as the Kiryah, the second week of anti-government demonstrations to be coming out in full force against the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his right-wing government for their policies that have not seen a deal framework to bring back the remaining Israeli captives. When we talked to demonstrators last week, they said they were fed up with the government, fed up with their policies, and that they need to be giving up more concessions in order to secure a deal. So at some point in the evening, the 2 demonstrations will converge into one larger protest calling for the release of the remaining Israeli captives.
Hamda, thank you very much for that. Of course, we'll be following those protests with you throughout the evening here on Al Jazeera. Hamda Salhout live there in Tel Aviv.